Start. Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, thumma amma ba'd. To proceed, today we will have the chapter on explicit and implicit divorce, Babu Sarih al-Talaqi wa kinayatih. Imam ibn Qudamah rahimahullah, who died in the year 620 after the Hijrah, said in his book Umdat al-Fiqh, صريحه لفظ الطلاق وما تصرف منه كقوله أنت طالق أو مطلقة أو طلقت. The explicit words of divorce are talaq, is the word of talaq itself, which is the masdar, the verbal noun, and those that are derived from it, such as you are taliq, adjective, or you are mutallaqa, adjective in the passive voice, or I divorced you, talaqtuki, I divorced you. So why do they have to make a chapter for talaq and sarih al-talaq, and where is it all coming from? It is all coming from the fact that Allah gave men 3 divorces and did not allow them to take their women back after 3 divorces. That meant what? That we have to count the divorces. And that meant what? That we have to figure out which divorce counts and which divorce doesn't count, right? So all of this, all of the basically detailed chapters on different types of talaq have to do, the origin of this has to do with the divine objective that men don't keep on taking their women back into marriage when the marriage had proven once, twice, thrice that it is a failure. Like we said before, sometimes people get stuck into certain relationships, and sometimes people get stuck into sort of certain life arrangements that they have, that they feel that they cannot survive without them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to them, no, there is life beyond this life arrangement, whether it's marriage or something else, but there is life beyond this. So if it has proven a failure 3 times, when maybe then both of you are better off looking for some other arrangement. Now, so we have to count, and now we have to figure out what counts. And now sometimes we'll go to court, because sometimes the woman says, he gave me a divorce, and the man denies it, and they'll have to take each other to court. And now the court will have to sort of adjudicate this matter. So we have all of this coming from that source. So sarih al-talaq wa kinayatihi, why do we have to separate between sarih al-talaq wa kinayatihi? Between the explicit and implicit divorce, words that are explicit and words that are implicit. What are words that are implicit? We're done. You're free. A lot of words, you know, ilhaqi bi ahlik, go to your family, or return to your family, something of that nature. Implicit, but certainly not explicit. And then there are words that are sort of controversial. Sarrahtuki, you know, faraqtuki, some words are controversial. The Shaykh here says that what is explicit, you know, in the madhab, what is explicit is the word talaq as a verbal noun, and anything that is derived from the word talaq, whether it's an adjective in the past voice, or like verb. فَمَتَى أَتَى بِهِ, and the reason why we have to make the distinction is because sarih al-talaq, the explicit divorce, it counts regardless of your intention. You could have intended whatever, but we will come to this later. Are we going to come to it, or should I discuss it? Okay, maybe the next, I'll discuss it with the next phrase. So the difference is صريح الطلاق, explicit divorce, counts regardless of intention, generally speaking, and we will come to some details now. But implicit divorce needs an intention to count. Implicit divorce needs an intention to count. So if someone says to his wife, you're free, we're done, something, if he intended to divorce her by this word, it counts as divorce. The Sheikh then said, فَمَتَى أَتَى بِهِ بِصَرِيحِ الطَّلَاقِ طَلُقَتْ وَإِنْ لَمْ يَنْوِهِ. When he speaks an explicit word of talaq, she becomes immediately divorced even if he did not intend it. But why? Why even if he did not intend it? Even if he did not intend it, because talaq usually is not about a person. This is not like an oath or a vow. This is about a relationship that involves two parties. And so it is not only up to you to say what you intended. If you say something that is explicit, it is not really up to you only. There is someone here who heard it, and someone who will take you to court, you know. So even if he did not intend it. So here is the breakdown of this, even if he did not intend it. So we have three different scenarios. He said to his wife, you are divorced. And keep in mind, does it come later or it doesn't come? If he said to his wife, you are divorced in any language other than Arabic, that is explicit, a word of explicit divorce, it will count as explicit. Such as divorced in English will count as an explicit word of divorce. Because some people think that it doesn't, and you have to say it in Arabic. No, it counts. And it counts according to the majority, even without witnesses. It counts according to Malik if you have two witnesses who know the language and who can testify that this means explicit divorce. But anyway, that's a technicality. But let us say that divorce in any language, explicit words of divorce in any language, count as the explicit word of divorce in Arabic. Is that clear? Okay, we're done with this. So now, if someone says to his wife, you are divorced, you're taliq or divorced, explicit word of divorce in any language, then he says, I did not intend it. Now, did he actually intend to say the word, but he did not intend it to initiate the divorce? So he intended to say the word taliq in jest, or whatever, like, you know, he just wanted to frighten her, he wanted to say it in jest, or something like that. But he did not intend to divorce her. This counts by the agreement of the four madhahib, because the Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, somewhat controversial, but accepted by many scholars, including Tirmidhi and others, said, ثلاث جدهن جد وهزلهن جد النكاح والطلاق والرجعة. Three things, whether undertaken seriously or in jest, they are treated as serious. Nikah, marriage; talaq, divorce; raj'a, taking back your wife after divorce. They count as divorce. Now we will add to this also emancipation in some other reports. So now, if he said it in jest, it will count according to the four madhahib. But let us say he said it, but he did not mean talaq. Not in jest, he did not mean the word of talaq, but he was laughing or playing or, you know, scaring her or whatever. But he meant to say طالق for a different meaning, because the word is polysemic. Or he meant to say, and they sort of hypothesize and they say, isqini ma'an, and then he told her, talaqtuk or something like, you know, give me water, and then it comes out of his mouth, you're taliq or something. Like he meant to say something else. He meant to say anything else and just came out of his mouth, taliq or talaqtuk, or some word that came out of his mouth. So in this case, he said it to mean something else. Why? Because what does talaq mean? Released, free, released, etc. If she was tied, and he meant if she was tied, and he meant to say you are free of your ties, or you know, whatever it is, like whatever he meant. He meant to say taliq, meaning released. What do we do in these two cases? He comes and says, I meant to say, huh?
You mean physically tied, right?
Physically tied, yes. Yeah, it was like a rope. What do we say? What happens here? Now we have one of three scenarios, and actually I looked at the book and I mentioned 2 out of 3, even though we have one of 3 scenarios. One scenario is when there is a qarina that is complementary proof or supplemental proof or corroborative evidence, qarina, that he actually meant it. Qarina, that he actually meant it. Qarina, that he actually did not mean it. And no qarina, right? Can you think of anything else? Any other option? There is corroborative proof that he meant it, corroborative proof that he did not mean it, no corroborative proof. So corroborative proof that he meant it, they were fighting, and he said to her, you're taliq. You know, so that's corroborative proof that he meant it. In this case, by agreement of the four madhahib, she is taliq. It is effective. Okay. What about if there is no qarina? No qarina, either way, to tell us whether he meant it or he did not mean it. No qarina. In this case, by the agreement of the four madhahib, it is effective. Why? Because it's explicit. It is explicit. What if there is qarina that he did not mean it? Like they were really having a good time, and then they're like having lunch or a good time, and then he was talking to her and he told her you're taliq or something. Or she was actually tied physically, and then he undid her ties, and he told her, "Inti taliq, you are now released, or you're released." So there is now a qarina that he did not mean it. What if there is a qarina that he did not mean it? What happens in this case? So the Malikis, Shafi'is, and Hanbalis will accept it. Will accept it. The Hanafis will say that yudayyan, meaning that we'll leave it up to him in terms of whether it actually happened or not. But we will not accept it in court because it is unlikely. Unlikely. So we will not accept it in court. So what does that mean? What about the wife in this case? The Hanafis will not allow her to believe him. they will tell her to run away from him or to sort of ransom herself from him by money, or run away from him. Run away from him. They will not allow her to kill him. They actually mentioned that. They clearly say that. But they will tell her to run away from him, or ransom herself. But anyway. But they will not accept it. So this guy, it is possible that this guy actually didn't mean it. They're just telling her that even though between him and God, whatever he meant would count, but you, since you heard it, you should treat this as a divorce. And you are not allowed to be with him as a wife. So run away, give him money to divorce you, do something about it, but don't kill him. So these are the three scenarios. The three scenarios. Someone said to his wife, "You're talaq," and then said, "I did not mean it." So the Hanbalis, since we are Hanbalis, the Hanbalis, what do they say here? They say that if she believes him and does not take him to court, then that is fine. We're not going to get into this. We're not going to get into their business among themselves. If she has a reason to believe him, and does not take him to court, so it is fine. If she does not have a reason to believe him and takes him to court, the Hanbalis will say, qarina that he meant it, effective. No qarina, effective. Qarina he did not mean it. The Hanbalis are not clear about this, by the way. The Shafi'is are more clear about when there is a qarina that he did not mean it, it does not count, and we will accept it from him, accept his claim. The Hanbalis are not clear about this. But there are two reports from Imam Ahmad. The later Hanbalis are not clear about this. In fact, you read the later Hanbalis and you think that they think that it will not be accepted from him in all cases. The earlier Hanbalis did mention that Imam Ahmad was clear about this, that it would not count against him if he did not mean it. And the two reports from Imam Ahmad that it counts and does not count, the best way to reconcile between the two reports is to say that one report applies to when there is a qarina that he did not mean it, and one report to be under, which is that it will count, will be effective, is when there is no qarina that he did not mean it.
And this is just for the word talaq, correct?
طالق, طلاق, مطلقة, طلقتك. Any sarih talaq or any explicit talaq. So then the Sheikh said, وما عداه مما يحتمل الطلاق فكناية لا يقع به الطلاق إلا أن ينويه. Otherwise, all implicit words that could mean divorce will be treated as metaphors, and their ultimate interpretation will depend on his intention. So anything else depends on anything else that is implicit in divorce will depend on his intention. If he meant divorce, then it happens, and otherwise it will not take place. What about writing? Texting divorce. It is certainly impolite and rude, to end the relationship of this nature by texting. But what if someone did it? Okay, writing divorce, we will, even though they may consider it, they may call it explicit, but they treat it as implicit. There is disagreement within the madhahib, all the four madhahib, there is disagreement inside them. But the stronger position is that it is treated as implicit. The Hanbalis particularly say if he claimed that he was just trying the pen, he was improving his handwriting. They even say أردت غمها, if he said I meant to annoy her or frighten her or cause her grief, we will accept it. It may be a little inconsistent, because if he said this about a verbal like a verbal divorce, they will not accept it. But if he wrote his wife a text, "You are divorced," and he says that I was trying the keyboard, they will accept it. It may sound a little inconsistent, but at the end of the day, they're treating the writing not as strong as the verbal pronouncement, because the default for them when it comes to divorce is the verbal pronouncement. What if someone divorced his wife in his heart? Counts? No, it doesn't count, by the way. It does not count. There has to be a verbal pronouncement. What if he's mute? Only the mute, his signal will be accepted. Only mute people, their signal of divorce will be accepted. But divorce by heart does not count. That's why, obsessive people, OCD people, who do divorce their wives all the time internally, you just assure them, no problem whatsoever. Even if you divorced her 100 times, there is no problem. It is the verbal pronouncement. Okay, so I think that's clear. So writing here is treated as if it is implicit, not explicit. We need the intention. What about if someone writes in the court of law? How are we counting this or not? We should count this unless there is clear indication that this was done in a non-shara'i court under coercion, duress. It should count, because the circumstance does not allow for other sort of intentions. I mean, you don't go to court to improve your handwriting or anything, try the keyboard. So writing in court, signing in court will count against him unless he proves that he is under duress. So is that clear? Clear. Then the Sheikh said, فَلَوْ قِيلَ لَهُ أَلَكَ امْرَأَةٌ قَالَ لَا ينوي الكذب لم تطلق وإن قال طلقتها طلقت وإن نوى الكذب. If a man is asked, do you have a wife? And he says no, intending to lie, she does not become divorced, because he did not utter the word of divorce. However, if he says, I divorced her, she becomes divorced even if he intended to lie. So what the fuqaha are trying to say is, this is not only about you. The word of divorce is about a relationship that has two parties involved in it. You do not use this word at all, lying, jesting, anything. If you use it, we will count it against you. Is that clear? And that's also fair, because if we allow people to use it and just to use it while lying, how would the woman know if he was lying or not lying or jesting or not? Then it says here, وَإِنْ قَالَ لِامْرَأَتِهِ أَنْتِ خَلِيِّ أَوْ بَرِيِّ أَوْ بَاءٍ أَوْ بَتَّ أَوْ بَتْلَ ينوي طلاقها طلقت ثلاثا إلا أن ينوي دونها وما عدا هذه يقع به واحدة إلا أن ينوي ثلاثا. He will mention here certain words that in Arabic are very strong words of divorce, strong words. That is why in the authorized view of the Hanbali madhab, which he does not accept here in this book, but in the authorized view according to the later Hanbalis, these words will count as 3 divorces regardless of what he intended. These words will count as 3 divorces regardless of what he intended. Imam ibn Qudamah here takes the other position in the Hanbali madhab, that these words will count as 1 divorce and not 3. So he says, if he says to his wife, you are khaliyya. Khaliyya means what? Khaliyya means like free of ties, or, naqa khaliyya, untied camel. Naqa khaliyya, untied camel. Or bariya. Bariya means what? From bara'a, from innocence, from free of liability. Free of liability, free of burden, free of the burden of marriage. Or ba'in. Ba'in means what? We say finalized. It comes from bain, which is separation, separation. Or batta. Batta comes from bat, which is qata, which is cutting. Or batla. You know how we say Maryam al-Batul? Maryam al-Batul because she is celibate, no man in her life. So intending, if he says any of this, intending to divorce her, she becomes divorced 3 times unless he intended less than that. Intended less than that. And now in the authorized view of the Hanbali madhab, whatever he intended, it will count as 3. Here, it will count as 3 only if unless he intended less than that. In the other view of the Hanbali madhab, they will not question what he intended. Yes?
All of them, or just one of these words?
Or any one of these words counts as 3. Regardless of his intention according to the authorized view of the Hanbali madhab. But here, Imam ibn Qudamah says she becomes divorced 3 times unless he intended less than that. Aside from that, the divorce will always count as a singular divorce unless he intends a composite 3-fold divorce. So aside from these words, the divorce will always count as 1, unless he intended a composite 3-fold divorce. What about these words? These words by default mean 3. But we will still, here he says we will still ask about his niyyah. There, in the authorized view, according to the latter Hanbalis, they will not ask him about his niyyah, they'll just count it as 3. Okay, وَإِنْ خَيَّرَ امْرَأَتَهُ فَاخْتَارَتْ نَفْسَهَا طَلُقَتْ وَاحِدَةً. If he gives his wife the choice and she chooses separation, she is divorced 1 time. وإن لم تختر أو اختارت زوجها لم يقع شيء. قالت عائشة رضي الله عنها قد خيرنا رسول الله أفكان طلاقا. If she does not choose, or if she chooses to remain with her husband, no divorce takes place. Aisha رضي الله عنها said, the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم gave us the choice. Was that a divorce? This is a rhetorical question to say it wasn't a divorce, just a choice. وليس لها أن تختار إلا في المجلس إلا أن يجعله لها فيما بعد. She is not entitled to choose except in the same session when he gives her the choice, unless he gives her the option after that. So if someone says to his wife, choose yourself, or gives her the choice, all of the mazahib except the Hanbalis will give her the choice as long as they are in the same session. Only the Hanbalis will extend it until he recants it. Only the Hanbalis will extend it beyond the session until he recants it. So someone can give his wife the right, because if he has the power to initiate divorce, does he have the power to have an agent, to authorize someone to divorce her? Yes, he does, including herself. He he can authorize her to divorce herself. And this would be valid until he recants it. Because if he is the asil, meaning the one authorized by default, the primary authorized by default, then he can take it back from the wakil, the agent. So, but he can give her that right until he recants it. Hanafis, Malikis, and Shafi'is say he can get, if she does not take it in the same session when they're sitting in the same ada, in Egyptian, in the same majlis, the same session, then she loses it. She loses the right to divorce herself. Has to be in the same session. The Hanbalis do what? Extend it afterwards until he recants it. Okay. Now we have talked before about the Hanafis giving her the right to divorce if she demanded it as a prenuptial agreement. Right? Do you remember this? She demanded this in the prenuptial agreement. The Hanafis will give it to her. The Hanbalis will give it to her during the marriage until he recants it. And then وإن قال لها أمرك بيدك أو طلقي نفسك فهو في يدها حتى يفسخ أو يطأ. So when he gave her the choice, she had to use it in the same session. Unless he gives her the option to use it afterwards, then she can use it afterwards. The choice, you know. And if he gives her the choice, she can divorce herself multiple times. But if he tells her طلقي نفسك, then the stronger position in the madhab is that she is able to divorce herself once. But if he gives her the choice, she's able to divorce herself multiple times. If he gives her the choice, which means it's up to you, choose, you know. It's in the same session according to the majority, except to the Hanbalis, but he will have to say, you have the option after this. He will have to give it to her. But if he says to her, your matter is in your hand, or divorce yourself, then it is up to her unless he rescinds the authorization or has intercourse with her. So if he says to her, your matter is in your hands, or divorce yourself, he does not have to give her the option after the session. She automatically has it until he rescinds, until he retracts, until he recants, takes it back. But she automatically has it. You know, it's up to you. She can divorce herself anytime. Is this advisable? No, it is not. Let's say this properly. Well, one of the things that we can say is that the man is responsible for all the expenses of the marriage and divorce and the custody, and that is Islamically. And the ujrat al-hadina, compensation for custody, and all of that. Does that make him more hesitant than the woman? Yes, it would make him more hesitant. That is even saying that they don't have inherent differences that would make him less emotional and less likely to divorce. Although many, you know, it's complicated nowadays. But it is also true that it is not only about inherent differences, but it is also about the system. Well, Islam has a system. Islam makes the man responsible for the dowry. Islam makes the man responsible for the maintenance. Islam makes the man responsible for the mut'ah, which is the bereavement gift. Islam makes Islam responsible for the nafaqah, which is the maintenance afterwards. Islam makes the man responsible for the hadana, which for the nafaqah on the kids, and ujrat al-hadana, the compensation for the custodian, the mother of the kids. She will sit at home and she will tell him, you know, I'm taking care of your kids. I'm not going to do it for free. You'll have to pay me a compensation for my taking care of your kids. Islam demands the man to do this. A system that puts all of these responsibilities on the man, if it does not give him the right to divorce, it is utterly unfair. It would be utterly unfair to give the right to divorce to the woman and yet make all of those demands of the man. Would be utterly unfair. Hope this is, and I can take questions also, comments. But I'm done. أقول قولي هذا أستغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Any quick questions from this side? Is utterly unfair or not?